time.
Strengthening judicial integrity and the rule of law in focus as Nigeria Judges Conference gets underway in Abuja.
President Buhari receives ICAO president and says Nigeria's aviation infrastructure will be speedily enhanced.
FCT Minister flags off construction of 2 Apowasa service carriageway in Abuja.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on incessant hike in electricity tariff, plus tribute to the late Dr. Alex Ekwueme, former Vice President of the Federal Republic.
Now, over the years, there's been public outcry over the continuous increase in the unit of price of electricity tariff, especially under the new regime known as a multi-year tariff order, and that's the MYTO.
Well, this, of course, is in spite of various interventions by the federal government, including the 213 billion naira that the Nigerian Electricity Market Stabilization Fund was supposed to, of course, help augment.
Well, fixing electricity tariff has been a continuous among stakeholders in the past few years. Hence, adoption of a multi-year tariff order in 2008 to regulate the tariff if consultations with key players in the sector, including labor and consumers, to provide a correct pricing of electricity.
Well, the new order abolishes the fixed tariff that had been in existence for quite some time. And it's to, among others, provide a periodic review of tariff. And this, according to the order, will be carried out twice yearly.
However, there's been a new proposal by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to amend the order to make electricity tariff review either monthly or quarterly against the 6-month period.
Now, whatever period might be agreed upon, observers have always indicated that increases in tariff are a contentious matter. And electricity, of course, is not an exception for this purpose. For instance, the last tariff review of 2015 did not end up well, as residential and industrial consumers declined to accept the new unit prices.
Now, worried over the excessive electricity charges by discos, and that's the distribution companies, through prepaid meters, the House of Representatives set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the quality of the new Mojek meters being installed by discos.
So what is wrong with the new prepaid meters, and why the continuous increase in electricity tariff in Nigeria? Are consumers really getting value for their money? Now, what kind of electricity tariff model should the country subscribe to for the benefit of consumers? These, of course, are some of the questions we'll be seeking answers from our guests who will be joining us as we'll examine the incessant hike in electricity tariff in Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadola, and I say thank you for being with us on the Good Morning Nigeria today.
And of course, Kingsley, the Mojek meters, that's one that's bothering a lot of people. For instance, I use that and it's running really fast.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I have not accessed the Mojek meters, but I do know that whatever meter you use now, the tariffs are a bit punitive, if not somewhat excessive. Quite aside from that, I haven't seen the Mojek meters at work, but those who using Mojet meters have exactly the same complaint that you have indicated now, that the speed at which it runs is breakneck.
All right, I'm Rhoda Anon. I'm welcoming you to the program this morning, and we are live from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, on Africa's largest television network, the NTA. And of course, on the program, we'll take a look at the life and times of late former Vice President, Dr. Alex Ekwueme. And just a quick reminder that in the course of the program, we also have our companion segments. We have the newspaper review, we've got business, sports, foreign, and entertainment. But as always, the news comes first. And Anne Juvenile is our guide this morning. Anne, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. Strengthening judicial integrity and the rule of law is the focus of this year's All Nigeria Judges Conference, now underway in Abuja. President Muhammadu Buhari, who declared the conference open, once again called for effective synergy between the executive and judiciary in combating graft and other forms of corruption, which he said are endemic in Nigeria's public life. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen, could not agree less.
The judiciary, the public expects fairness, impartiality, and speed in the administration of justice. The knock-on efforts of these delays and discontinuities range from loss of confidence in the judicial system to overcrowding of prisons. This is an area your lordship should pay close attention to in your efforts at reforming the system.
We are all aware the judiciary has been in the eye of the storm in recent times, due largely to the activities of a few bad eggs in our midst. You will all agree with me that a corrupt judge is not only a disgrace to the bench and the noble profession, but also a disaster to the cause of justice and the nation. We have a duty to change the wrong perception and narratives. The National Judicial Council is already tackling this cankerworm headlong.
Meanwhile, the trial of Nnamdi Kanu and 3 others at the Federal High Court in Abuja has been temporarily stalled due to the ongoing judges' conference holding in Abuja. The presiding judge, Justice Binta Nyako, had earlier ordered the sureties to prove their innocence in the circumstance surrounding Nnamdi Kanu's absence in court to attend to his trial.
I, on the side of the prosecution, were ready to go on with the case today.
We have an application we made before the court, compelling the military to produce him before the court.
Continuous voter education to achieve credible elections that will solidify Nigeria's democracy dominated discussions at an interactive forum organized by Nigeria Institute of Legislative Studies and the media in Abuja.
This interface is intended to achieve mutual cooperation, collaboration, and to build strategic partnership with media towards achieving a free, credible, acceptable general elections in 2019.
How do we work together to see that democracy is deepened?
After every round of election, this country goes into a form of recession. It is because of the expensive nature of that process. How do we conscientize Nigerian people? It is not about money, it is about your future, it is about your well-being, it is about your welfare.
Nigeria's aviation infrastructure will be speedily enhanced for the benefit of the nation's economic development. President Muhammadu Buhari gave this assurance while receiving the president of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, Muyiwa Aliyu.
Nigeria will not sit by. We will take advantage of the opportunity to close some deals if we can, or to at least agree to something and sign some MOUs regarding not only the national carrier but financing other infrastructural needs of the country.
It's also an opportunity for me as president of the ICAO Council to bring to the attention of Mr. President of the significant recognition that Nigeria is receiving when it comes to aviation development.
FCT Minister Mohammed Musa Bello has officially flagged off the construction of 2 Apo-Wasa service carriageways that will link the Karshi-Apo Road in Abuja. The road construction is part of the FCT administration's plan to unlock the economic potentials of the nation's capital.
Also, I assure you that by the grace of God, the FCT administration will provide all the needed support to make sure that, God willing, in the next 12 months down the road, we'll come here to commission the project.
To bring about employment, and people will be gainfully employed. People will work here, and then above all, there will be benefit to it, which is the development of the area.
Security, cooperation, economic growth and development, as well as governance and democracy, are issues on the table as the Nigeria-US Binational Commission opens in Abuja. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema, is engaging U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, John Sullivan, at the meeting.
It's clearly evident that in spite of the change in leadership on both sides, our foreign policy objectives to promote stronger ties between our two countries is firmly on course, with the very, very strong and committed leadership and guidance of our two presidents.
Nigeria's success does not depend on its military effectiveness on the battlefield alone. It requires improvements to the economy and governance off the battlefield as well. In other words, a comprehensive response is necessary to build a better future in the Northeast and in Nigeria as a whole.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Rhoda after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Everybody comes to the city to seek greener pasture. No, not everybody. Many people also run away from their home villages in search of refuge and peace in the city. These people are running away from archaic customs and traditions, draconian village practices that have in one way or the other made them victims of circumstances based on cultural practices.
It sounds like a tale out of the medieval era.
Oh yes. Keep a date with us this week on Professor John Bull in this episode titled Running to the City, and discover how Boam and Nje escaped to become part and parcel of Professor John Bull's household and proximate people. Also, find out why Jumoke will love Jeroboam instead of Flashboy.
Oh, my baby shawarma with a dash and a style. Move like a flash, baby.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
This is Nigeria, a nation fast developing its potentials. Nigeria is developing, and you have a part to play in nation building. Declare your assets and income today in the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, VAID, which is on till March 31, 2018.
When you honestly declare your assets and income and regularize your tax status through VADES, the government will have more resources to build a better Nigeria.
Declaration before December 31, 2017 attracts no interest, no penalties, no tax prosecution, and no tax audit. Visit www.vades.gov.ng or the nearest tax office for more information. This message is brought to you by the federal government, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the State Boards of Internal Revenue. VADES, I declare, my duty, my nation.
Babe, what's up? What you doing?
I'll call you back. I'm not on Nadia.
Hey, babe, what you doing? What you doing? What you doing?
Hello, baby. It's even seen your cocoa. Even Okuli is here.
I love you. Yes.
Get 10 times your recharge value to call and browse anyhow. Recharge with *220 star the pin hash to enjoy this offer. Available to new and existing subscribers.
Babe, what you doing?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily. In unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilet, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 Cap Full for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid, to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, we are live on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA, and it's Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's bring you up to date in the world of business, as the contribution of the non-oil sector to national GDP has been described as a clear indication of the workability of federal government's economic diversification policy. Plus, the equities market opened in the week in the green. Details of these and more with Kolo Mohammed.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for joining us on Business News. Activities in the oil markets have slowed down ahead of an OPEC meeting at the end of the month, when the producer club is expected to decide whether to continue output cuts aimed at propping up prices. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, together with a group of non-OPEC producers led by Russia, has been restraining output since the start of this year in a bid to end the global supply overhang and prop up prices. The deal to cap output is due to expire in March 2018, but OPEC will meet on November 30th to discuss the outlook for the policy. OPEC is expected to agree an extension of the cut as storage levels remain high despite recent drawdowns, although there are doubts about the willingness of some participants to continue to restrain output. Brent crude future is the international benchmark for oil prices, and it sold for $62 a barrel on Monday. Nigeria's gross domestic product GDP grew in the third quarter of 2017 by 1.40% year-on-year in real terms. This is the second consecutive positive growth since the emergence of the economy from a recession in the second quarter of 2017. This growth is 3.74% points higher than the rate recorded in the corresponding quarter of 2016. In the quarter under review, aggregate GDP stood at over 29 million in nominal terms, higher when compared to 26 million in the third quarter of 2016, resulting in a nominal GDP growth of 10.98%. This growth is higher relative to growth recorded in the third quarter of 2016 of 9.51%. In the period under review, oil production is estimated to have averaged 2.03 million barrels per day, 0.15 million barrels higher than the revised daily average production recorded in the second quarter of 2017. And the equities market opened the week in the green, with NSE All-Share Index gaining 0.24% to close at 6,792.60 basis point. Time now to put all the closing figures from Monday's trading into perspective. That's business news. Good Morning Nigeria continues in just a moment. Thanks for watching.
All right, thank you very much, Kolo, for the business package. Newspaper review is next for us on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, Bayo Atoyebi is in the studio. Bayo, good morning, and it's always good to have you join us.
Thank you, Rhoda. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. And good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you. The story, obviously, that is on the front pages of the papers we have this morning in terms of either their lead or some other prominence has to do with the passing of former Vice President of the Second Republic, Dr. Alex Ekwueme. Bayo, of course, we discussed that when you hinted in the course of our review yesterday before the stories hit the airwaves and also got to the print media. Now, it's a lead story for The Guardian. The Guardian says, immortalize Ekwueme, Igbo, and others tell federal government. And 3 riders, Buhari, Obasanjo, Anyanku, and governors pay tribute. I have lost a brother, says Shehu Shagari, and deceased family opens condolence register. And it's also the lead story for the Punch newspaper. Punch captures it this way with a double-decker headline. It says, Buhari, Shagari, Obasanjo, and others mourn Ekwueme. The story is in greater detail on pages 2 and 7, but you have a number of writers there taken from the tributes to the former vice president. He lived nobly and died in nobility. That's according to Obasanjo, former president. His demise, end of an era, Southeast governors. I mourn with Nigeria, for we have all lost a patriot. That's Tinubu, chieftain of the APC. It's with a deep sense of loss that I heard about the demise of my brother, Shehu Shagari, who was president during the Second Republic, and Ekwueme was vice president. Now, you also have that story on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, but it's a strip headline just below the photograph there. It says with a kicker, Ekwueme, Buhari, Shagari, Saraki, Atiku, and governors and others mourn. The story is in greater detail on page 7.
And on the leadership, on the leadership, that's what's leading also on the leadership newspaper, and it's the lead story. It says Nigeria's first elected vice president, Ekwueme, dies at 85. With some riders there will miss his counsel on national issues, says President Muhammadu Buhari. Saraki Dogara governors mourn. He served Nigeria meticulously, says Shagari. And Yakasa says, I taught him Hausa in Kirikiri prison. Those are the riders there to that lead story. And let's take a look at the New Telegraph now. It's not the lead story for the New Telegraph, it's just a strip headline, and it's at the foot of the paper on the New Telegraph. It's at the foot of the paper. It says, Nigerians mourn as Ekwueme dies in London. Buhari, OBJ, Shagari, IBB, Atiku, Kalu, governors pay tribute. There's a story that's on page 7, 11, and 13. All right, Bayo.
Yes, thank you, Rhoda. Expectedly, the tributes are flowing from all over the Federation. President Muhammadu Buhari has, in fact, condoled the Kingdom of Oku, the Agwata Traditional Council, and he said specifically that Dr. Alex Ekwueme had unwavering commitment to the unity of Nigeria. He says he made personal sacrifices to help lay the foundation for the sustainable democracy in Nigeria. Former President Alhaji Shehu Shagari said patently that he has lost a brother. You recall that he was his vice president to Alhaji Shehu Shagari. He said he described him as a humble Nigerian who contributed in various capacities to the nation's development. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo says he showed courage over the years of the conviction and integrity in national affairs. He is one of the titans of Nigeria's politics and an illustrious elder statesman. General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, also former military president, says his simplicity is rare virtue. His courage is a life of values and morality. In fact, former Kaduna State Governor Alhaji Abdulkadir Balarabe Musa recalls that he is a gentleman and very liberal and does not like controversies. He recalls specifically that Dr. Alex Ekwueme had a soft spot for Malam Aminu Kano, who was leader of the People Redemption Party. He belonged to National People's Party, NPN, but when there was controversy between the PRP and it was factionalized, Dr. Alex Ekwueme had called Balarabe Musa and Alhaji Abubakar Rimi and enjoined them to reconcile with Malam Aminu Kano. That is the man of peace that Dr. Alex Ekwueme was. A condolence register has already been opened at his residence in Abuja and at Oko.
All right, Bayo, let's turn our attention. Let's get back to the New Telegraph now. And on the New Telegraph, U.S. will help Nigeria repatriate stolen assets. Buhari to CJN, probe of judges not to intimidate judiciary, and that was during the judges conference that opened yesterday. And the Justice Nogan Water says will disgrace, persecute corrupt judges. And below the leadership on the foot of the paper, just the right-hand corner, it says looted $221 million start in Switzerland, will be repatriated in December, says federal government. That's a story on page 27 of the leadership.
Let's return to The Guardian. The second lead story on the front page of The Guardian is on the economy. And the headline is, negative growth in real sector contradicts government's GDP numbers. Negative growth in real sector contradicts government's GDP numbers. And plunges, that's the first rider, plunges to minus 2.85% despite PMI expansion. And NBS data, that's the National Bureau of Statistics data, vindicates fiscal policies, says presidency. Now that story is there on the economy. Now you have other stories, of course, on the front pages of other papers with regard to the economy. Very quickly, Bayo, let me take this.
Yes.
You have it here on the front page of the Punch newspaper above the headline. The Punch says federal government announces prizes for $3 billion Eurobond. With the rider, government excited as GDP grows by 1.4%. And then two other headlines very quickly there. Fayose okays death penalty for cultists. That's on page 19. And 13 billion naira contracts. EFCC obtains warrant to detain Anyin for 30 days. And citizens deserve to know why Nigeria Airways failed. That's on page 28. We'll finalize process for return of $321 million loot by December. This is according to the federal government, and the story is in greater detail on page 10.
All right, Bayo, very quickly, let's look at the GDP that hits 29 trillion naira. It's on the front page of the leadership, and just beside the picture story, it says, presidency excited as Nigeria's GDP hits 29 trillion naira. Economic grows by 1.4% in third quarter.
Well, this is sequel to the publication of the statistics by the National Bureau of Statistics on the economy. And it indicates that the economy grew by 1.4% this third quarter. This is double the figure that it was last month. You recall that the economy came out of recession with about 0.55% growth. And it increased in the last quarter to 0.27. Now it has reached 1.4%, and that is a gradual increase. However, if you look down the economy, the indications are that the non-oil sector, the growth in mining, particularly in the area of quarrying, was about 10.19%. Crop production was about 24.4%, while manufacturing, covering about 13 activities, posted about 10.32%. However, there is implication there, particularly that the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank is also expectedly a meeting today and tomorrow, and the expectation across the nation is that will there be slashes in the rates. currently, the economy seems to be doing very well. External reserves are placed at about $34.32 billion. The Naira exchange rate has stabilized for a while now, about 360 or thereabout, and the benchmark for the Brent crude now is about $62.25 per barrel. Following all this, the questions are, will there be rate cuts from the MPL? Will the interest rate be eased to propel the economy? And there is also the danger that inflation will come in, particularly if there are wage increases that could increase expenditure in the economy. So these are the moot questions for the Monetary Policy Group Committee that is moving. But you will recall that the monetary policy rate has been consistent, and the central bank has maintained it, and it has helped pull the economy, the economy out of recession and is on a path of steady growth.
All right, Bayo, let's see, the economy is recovering. Let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper again. Let's return to the lower half of the Punch newspaper. Some of them are follow-up stories. It says, ex-PDP chair's son, police obtain CCTV footage and arrest guards. That's on page 4. And power firms issue force majeure notice to federal government. And you have another one there, PDP convention, Adeniran petitions McAfee over election panel members. On pages 4 and 5 is the story. Lagos hospital detains mother and newborn for 4 months over bail. That story is on pages 4 and 5. And Buratai should explain Kanu's whereabouts, says Abaribe. It's a shorty. That's on page 12.
All right, let's take a look at other stories on the front page of the New Telegraph. Just below the nameplate, it says federal government floats a $3 billion bond to fund budget. And 2019, Nigeria moves to adopt electronic voting system. Army gets 137 new generals. That's on page 37. How Unilag student robbed musician of 11 million naira. And on the leadership, just one story I'm going to read there. It says, Army, that's the foot of the paper. It says, Army promotes 45 brigadier generals and 92 colonels. That's on page 10 of the leadership.
Well, talking about crime now, the story that was reported yesterday of Biliaminu Bello. Actually, there was an altercation following the confusion between the husband and the wife about suspicion of infidelity on matters that had been identified on the cell phone. Unfortunately, the wife was reported to have broken the bottle and the husband restrained her, but an uncle came and interceded. We were hoping that there would be peace by the next day, but unfortunately, by the next day, the family were called to the hospital to identify the body of the husband. Also, the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Kalu Idika Kalu, was robbed in his home. Guess who by? By his chef. The chef spiked his coffee. He drank and slept, and he brought in a gang of 3, and they robbed the former minister of his property. The commissioner of police in Lagos, Edoga Imohim, says that they were able to trace the group, and they found out that there is a syndicate, a group of 6 going about. They get you to hire cooks and house help. The house helps study you in your domestic environment, and they have a tendency to spike your food with sedatives, and when you sleep off, they rob you when you least expect it.
All right, Nigerian pilot. Let's return to the Nigerian pilot. Below the nameplate, you have this headline, Why I Didn't Implement 2014 National Conference Report. That's according to former President Goodluck Jonathan. That's on page 12. And then anti-graft war not to intimidate judiciary. And that's according to President Buhari as CJN worries over federal government's disobedience of court orders. Details of that can be found on page 2. Anti-graft war not to intimidate judiciary, says President Buhari. And then let's go straight to the foot of the front page of the Nigerian pilot. And 2 or 3 headlines we'll take from there. Lagos targets uninterrupted power supply by 2018. Obiano's victory and to godfatherism in Anambra. That's according to Odwa. As IPAC, Lords, INEC, and security agencies. BVN, that's the kicker. Banks are frustrating anti-graft war. Federal government tells court.
You recall President Robert Mugabe is renowned for his witty comments. He has reacted about the military placing him under house arrest. And he says, cowards are they who could not beat me when I was young, but have decided to do so when I am 93. The weakest military in the world is the Zimbabwe military. Overthrowing a 93-year-old man is the laziest thing they could do.
All right, Baya Ekwueme, would like to thank you very much. The deadline for him to resign expired yesterday, and by today, Parliament is reconvening in Harare to begin impeachment proceedings against President Robert Mugabe, 93 years old. Of course, the issues are still unfolding. Well, it's the same military that had propped him up over the years, he along with ZANU-PF. If he now says that they are the weakest, he should ask them what they did in 2008 when he lost the first round of election, indeed the election, to MDC's Morgan Tsvangirai, and then how they then, whacked the opposition, and the opposition then declined to participate in the supplementary or rerun election, which he then reportedly won. All right, so that does it for our newspaper review segment. Baya Ekwueme, would like to thank you for being with us today. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you, too.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be having two items for discussion. Frequent increases in electricity tariff when consumers are, of course, mostly in darkness. Plus, tribute to Dr. Alex Ekwueme, former Vice President.
The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, the Made in Nigeria campaign. In the midst of unprecedented multiple challenges, our great country Nigeria, as Africa's largest economy, is surely marching on to a new era of all-round prosperity, especially through re-engineered and diversified economy, powerfully driven by the change agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
We will patronize local entrepreneurs. We will promote the manufacturing powerhouses. Our objective is to make Nigeria a new manufacturing hub.
It is not time to complain. It is time to join the campaign. It is time for economic recovery, growth and diversification of our economy. By Made in Nigeria.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now? Sure. This gets just 1. It is clean. But not perfect 10. Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible. Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X. Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet. Wow. Now you also take that Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights. Come do on yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for this. Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
boy, wetin you talk make sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder for both.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, our first item for discussion this morning is the hike in electricity tariff. For some time now, the issue of tariff and metering has become a serious challenge in the power sector since its unbundling. This necessitated a cry by electricity consumers at the quality of the services being provided to them, which they complained about, are not commensurate to the tariff being collected from them. Omotola Amojola puts together this background report that will set the tone for our discussion this morning.
Electricity as an infrastructure affects both social and economic lives of any country, the availability of which helps in growing small businesses. The challenges of electricity in Nigeria is one with different dimensions, and Nigerians have had to cope with these dimensions at different times and sometimes all at once.
Quite unfortunate that a situation in a community where you have to contribute money to buy transformer, contribute money to buy cable, all infrastructure that has to do with electricity generation. And at the end of the day, this will be the one bringing bill for you when you are suffering to buy all this infrastructure for electricity. They know where to be found.
An individual opened a business concern for the hiring of canopies and chairs. And within 3 months, May, June, July, the person was given a bill of 214,000 naira a month.
To curb inadequacies in the distribution of electricity to consumers and the attendant challenges of irrational billions to citizens led to the enactment of the Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, which unbundled the sector with hope that privatization will aid availability of power. Many years after, Nigerians are still faced with the challenges that presented in it. While many complain of non-availability of meters, others are challenged with inadequate supply, rationing, and on the top of it, high tariff regime. The National Assembly has at different times spoken to the various challenges of electricity supply in Nigeria, calling attention to the deficit in the sector and the need for it to be addressed.
Available and affordable electricity is supposed to be a right and not a privilege.
Unless we understand and dissect what went wrong, nothing's going to happen.
The House of Representatives recently again drew attention to the excessive electricity tariff in Nigeria, especially as it concerns prepaid meters, calling for an investigation into the matter.
Honestly, it is taking a toll on the lives of common Nigerians, and we feel as a house that something must be done, otherwise Nigerians will not be able to enjoy power.
Join us on Good Morning Nigeria today as guests analyze the persistent challenge of tariff and metering.
All right, thank you very much, Omotola Amojola, for that background report. Now we have guests with us here in the Abuja studios, as well as at our Ibadan Network Center, to discuss this issue in greater detail. First, we'd like to welcome to our studios at this time the mover of the motion on the floor of the House of Representatives on the issue of frequent increases in electricity tariff. Is Honorable Adedakpo Lama Adesina, who represents Ibadan Southeast and Ibadan Northeast Federal Constituency. Honorable Lama Adesina, pleasure to have you join us.
Good morning.
And also here with us in the Abuja studios is Chijioke James, is a lawyer and president of the Electricity Consumers Association of Nigeria.
Morning.
Mr. James, pleasure to have you join us. Okay. And from our Ibadan Network Center, we have Mr. Sunday Oduton. Mr. Oduton is spokesperson of the Association of Electricity Distributors, Association of Nigeria Electricity Distributors. Mr. Oduton, a pleasure that you are with us on the program. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's begin with Honorable Lama Adesina. You moved the motion on excessive tariff, electricity tariff on the floor of the House. What was the rationale for the motion, and what are you seeking to achieve ultimately?
Thank you very much. The motion basically is very holistic. Number one, it speaks about the fact that there are a lot of Nigerians who have paid for prepaid meters, even though I believe that prepaid meters should be given free to consumers. who have not even been able to access prepaid meters. That's one leg of the motion. The other leg of the motion speaks about even the prepaid meter itself, whereby in a situation whereby you have a particular building with two different types of meters and they read differently. And the other part is a excessive hike in electricity tariff. So these are the three legs of the motion.
So what are you seeking to achieve with the motion?
What we're seeking to achieve is to alleviate the suffering of our people. A lot of people, for example, in places where you don't even have this meter, people are giving estimated billing. I went on a radio program sometime in Ibadan, and before the end of the program, an old woman called in, and she said she wanted me to visit her and come and see what she's going through. I went to the house after the radio program, and I realized that this woman has just about a few bulbs in her house, no television, a fan, and then at the end of the month, they bring 10,000 naira for her to pay. And she's telling me that how is it possible for her to use electricity? Prepared. As he,
Honorable Lam Additional, we'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Let's bring in the President of Electricity Consumers Association of Nigeria, Chijioke James. What are the complaints of your members?
The complaints are so many. First is that you don't go to the farm without your farming tool. The consumers are terrorized by the hike in price of electricity. That hike is not commensurate with the services that they get. Every consumer, from the #1 consumer of electricity, the president, up to the rural farmer in the village. Now, in 2005, the power sector was unbundled, and we have 1.5 decade of having tested between what we had and now. Thank God the Honorable is here. I think and I believe that going forward, they have to look at that power sector reform. If not, both the operators in the generation companies, in the transmission, the distribution, and the consumers will still be in one spot. You cannot, everywhere in the world, have close to 50% increase in price to a consumer to bear the burden without us having what we call a price shock. And if you look at it holistically, that increase is part or is a contributory factor to the rate of inflation in the economy generally. Because somebody who is paying, for example, you are paying 3,000 naira every month on electricity, only for you to have close to 50% increase. There will be price shock. And that price shock will affect the electricity sector. The stakeholders, I wonder if they actually thought through this process to be able to come up with that increase. The increase is unsustainable because, one, over 60% of electricity consumers all over the country are unmetered. So how do you really go on this business without the tool of trade? How do you check consumption? How How do you check wastage? How do you check preservation of energy for others? Now, on the estimated bill, the corruption there is massive. Whether you use electricity or you don't use electricity, in fact, the distribution companies, in some certain cases, for 3 weeks, no light. In some areas, for 2 weeks, no light. At the end of the month, consumers still get the bill. If you don't pay, no light, no reconnection. And when you even pay or you refuse to pay, and you finally, either by hook or crook, get the prepaid, they migrate the bill on your prepaid meter for lights you did not receive. So the position of Nigerian electricity consumers is that you cannot pay for services that is not rendered to you. And the inefficiency of the operators, whether the generation company, the distribution company, or the transmission company of Nigeria, must not be passed to the Nigerian consumers. It is not supposed to be the headache of the consumers. It's just because the consumer advocacy in Nigeria is at the lowest ebb. Who can speak for those at the very low rung of this sector?
Mr. Chijioke, let's bring it down now. Let's particularly look at the kind of hike increase we're talking about now. Is it in the prepaid meter or the estimated billing?
Both in the prepaid and the estimated bill, we have about 41% increase. And for you as a consumer not to have that price shock, it's minimum, best international practice, it should be below 25%. And in Nigeria, they increased 41% up, both for prepaid, those who are metered and those who are unmetered. In fact, those who are metered are on the worst, side of it. And that is where actually the corruption is. I was discussing with the Honorable before we came in. I said, look, the problem is not the power to do the right thing. The problem is, do we have the will to do the right thing? In the power sector, there are cabals that do not want the right thing to be done. For example, if Mr. President have said consistently that we must diversify the economy, and if we're exiting fossil fuel in the next decade or so, it is a must. The government must have the will to make sure that this power sector problem is solved. If not, the truth, and I'm blunt about it, is that we are going nowhere economically. For example, our competitor, probably South Africa, has both installed an evacuation capacity of about 50,000 megawatts. And the Ministry of Power was beating their chest at 7,000 megawatts, 7,001 megawatts as at September. That is, that we should be clapping for them.
Oh, all right. Chijioke James,
yes.
I'll get back to you in just a moment.
Right.
You're talking distribution now. We're looking at, let's really drive it home to the issue of the hike in the tariff. Now, let's go to Sunday Odutan, the spokesperson, Association of Nigeria Electricity Distributors. Mr. Sunday, you've listened to the Honorable and, of course, Mr. Chijioke James. We seem to be in the same place we've always been, even with the unbundling of the electricity. But then what is happening from your end? Why is the hike 41%?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me. I think the issue here is not just about talking about saying there's something like 41% of any increase or anything. I think what we should be talking about here is, why don't we have light? What can we do to have light? Where were we before privatization? Where are we now? Where are we supposed to be? Why are we not where we are supposed to be? And the first thing I want you to understand everything to do with lack of electricity in Nigeria has to do with the issue of Naira and Kobo. And we have to know where we are coming from. I will first of all want to remind you that between 1989 and 1999, a period of 10 years, Nigeria had 3 heads of state and 1 interim head of state, making 4 of them, or 3.5. Within that 10-year period, the budgeted money for power, not a single power plant was built in this country. Not only that, over time, Nigerian population has grown. Today, we are about 180 million people. And what is the highest generation so far? 5,074 megawatts. And that was in February 2016. And when I talk about generation, I'm not talking about readiness, installed capacity, or available generation. I'm talking about what can actually go into people's homes. So looking at that, we now have to talk about why is it that we don't have light. We don't have light because over the years there has been a lot of neglect. We don't have light because when the issue or the idea of privatization was conceived as far back as 2002, 2003 by the government of President Obasanjo, all through to 2005 with the law that was enacted, then through to the government of President Jonathan that eventually privatized, certain basic things are very important. And please allow me to quickly talk about bread. When you go to ShopRite or anywhere to buy bread, a loaf of bread comes at a cost. And before you get that bread, when you take a loaf of bread, the bread has passed through certain stages. Number one, to have bread, you need a wheat farmer. You need a flour mill. You need a bakery, a baker that will turn that flour into bread. You need transportation from the bakery to the supermarket. All those ones are added cost, and they all come together to form the price of bread. Unless you know the cost of production of any product, there's no way you can talk sensibly about the selling cost. In the case of electricity, what we are saying is very clear. And I'm happy that we have someone like Honorable Amadeshino here, who is also a politician, who is in government, who is in the National Assembly. I think they need to do the right thing. They need to ask the right question. When you talk about investigation, I've been part of so many investigative hearings, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and I think they should have record. They should go back to their record and check and see. We've been talking about this thing. The truth of the matter is that you cannot be buying a product for 68 naira, and you're only allowed to sell the same product for 31 naira 58 kobo. Even today, in reality, the actual is about 80 naira 88 kobo, and the average tariff is still hovering between 30 and 31 naira. So there's no way you can be talking about availability of a product without talking about the cost of production of that same product. There's no way you can be expecting me as a distributor to be buying, whether it is bread, whether it's water, whether it's Coca-Cola, whether it's electricity, all these products. You have to look at the cost of buying it vis-a-vis the cost of selling the same product. Unless we come to that reality, we'll be chasing shadows. In 5 years' time, we'll come back and be talking about the same thing. What a shame for a nation that we cannot even produce more than 20, even 30 or 40,000 megawatts, and we are clapping. And then what we do is we are very good at apportioning blame, naming, blaming, and claiming. Even our friends in the National Assembly, whether you are in the federal government, state government, or local government, even the cost of governance is too high in Nigeria. Why can't we invest properly in the power sector infrastructure? Why do we find it so easy to look for somebody to blame instead of saying how much does it cost you operators to produce and how much are you selling for? So it's either we are ready to pay for electricity or we want to continue to live in darkness. That is one. Estimated billing. Yes, estimated billing is not the best thing. Estimated billing is an aberration, but it is something that happens all over the world. I lived in England for 26 years. Yes, there was a time when people were estimated, but not in this way that we're doing it in Nigeria. We are not sincere. All of us, government, operators, and consumers, we are not sincere. Number one, I'm in Ibadan now. Ibadan disco alone, and I know that of all the disco, including Enugu disco, they need about 32 billion naira to meter their customers. Now, we have a tariff that is fixed. We are not operating like an island. We have a regulator that fixed the tariff. When you have a tariff, and inside that tariff, there is what we call allowable capex, capital expenditure that you are allowed to spend. If you are allowed to spend only 20 billion for all your capital expenditure, and metering alone will cost you 32 billion naira. Even if you want to meter alone and you don't want to provide transformer, pole, upgrade the system, how do you make it available when what you are allowed in your own tariff is 20 billion as against 32 billion for metering alone? We want to meter our customers. I want people to understand this. It is not in the interest of the discourse for people not to be metered. If I meter you, I'll be able to measure what you use. I live in Oluyole Estate. The issue about 1 meter counting more than the other, I think the Honorable needs to join us in sitting down and looking at the actual thing in the sector. This is not about politics. This is not about public relations. This is about facts and figures. When you have a meter that is over 10 years, in most cases, the integrity of that meter is in doubt. And that's why you see some people with old meters that are being metered on estimated billing. That's one. Number two, the issue of meter bypass, even in that same Oluyole Estate that he's talking about, and I can give a few places, even here in Ibadan, and all over the country, the energy theft is massive. Every time people steal energy, it has a negative impact on the issue of cost, the issue of liquidity, and of course it has an impact on the issue of tariff. So we have to look at all of these things in a holistic way, instead of pointing accusing fingers at the operators or at the government. For us in NANED, we are not in the business of blaming anybody, but we are saying that this country needs to fix power. If you don't fix the power sector, you cannot fix the Nigerian economy. We should stop deceiving the president. We should stop lying to the president. Let the president see the truth. We should stop playing politics with power. Let the regulator do their job. We cannot sit down here and we are saying, let them give up meter. Let them give up this. Why should we be contributing money to buy pole? It is wrong for people to be the one contributing money to repair their transformer or to buy pole. But I'm afraid that will continue as long as we do not take care of the Naira and Kobo issue that I'm talking about. As I speak to you, as at August 2017, the accrued shortfall in the power sector is 892 billion naira. And when you have this kind of shortfall and you say you want there to be power, there cannot be power unless we deal with the issue of this huge shortfall that we are having. Now, my brother there talked about the issue of efficiency. Just let me admit that the operators were all inefficient. There at all. Even when we talk about corruption, there is corruption all over. Corruption is here because we are all corrupt. Government, operators, and consumers. There are too many thieves. Too many thieves. Even in Molete, very close to the house of Alhaji Lamadation, the father of my honorable brother there, we just caught a lot of people stealing energy in that same area. And it's all over everywhere. So what I'm saying is this. For us to get this thing right, we need to know about the cost. And when we know the cost, the government has two options. Is that we, and my brother talked about tariff shock. I agree with him. That, okay, it's that we pass the cost through to the consumers who should pay the actual cost of energy, or government look at ways of bridging the shortfall. But if we pretend that nothing is going on, let me inform you that every month, the shortfall in the power sector, as at this morning, monthly, is 27 billion naira. And that will continue to build up. Somebody has to pay for it. If we don't do anything about it, I'm afraid we can talk, please let us walk the talk.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sunday Oduton. We've given a long narrative as to what the issues are in the electricity sector. Quite clearly, it would appear that the power sector is in crisis. And before we begin to break down the various aspects that you indicated, from the narrative that you have given, why don't you discuss, just pack up and go?
Oh, thank you very much. I like that. And I like it when Nigerians just talk about why don't you pack and go. For your information, last week, the DISCO put in a force majeure to the federal government. Funny enough, in the middle of the night, last night, the BP issued a statement calling different media houses to accept their statement and publish for Nigerians, saying that they are rejecting the force majeure. The force majeure is a simple thing. If you cannot fix this and make it whole and let us operate in a conducive environment, give me my money and let me go. I paid for this infrastructure, give me my money, take your license. So when you're saying, why not pack and go? Let me inform you this. I'll tell you two things. Number one, why haven't you asked yourself, the media, how many foreign direct investors do you see in the power sector today? Many foreigners are running away from this country because they know that we're a corrupt nation. Out of the 11 discos, one is owned by the federal government, Yola Disco. You should use Yola to assess the reality in the power sector. If the operators, the power sectors are not doing well, then how come that the federal government are not doing well in Yola? Go and show Nigerians how many meters have they given to consumers in Yola. How come that federal government cannot make Yola a good example for people to see that we, federal government, we are running Yola. See, these people are useless, but we are good. What have they done in Yola? That is an indication for you. So the issue of pack and go is not a problem. Give us our money, we will go. If you invite an angel or a malaika to come and run the power sector, I bet it, that angel will fail, given the same circumstances. We are just playing politics with power. We are not sincere. We are not ready to give Nigerians power. You cannot give what you don't have. Until we do the right thing, you cannot get the right thing. And until we address the issue of corruption everywhere, then you cannot even have the much needed foreign investment in Nigeria. And for the local investors who have risked their money into this business, and they are now the ones being demonized, I just pity them. Because if I have the money that they have, I will not put that money in the Nigerian power sector. I'll go to Bahamas and be enjoying my money. Because what we are doing here is...
All right, Odunton, Mr. Sunday Odunton, thank you very much. Again, I mean, this is the conversation is flowing. Gentlemen, just before we come back to you, Chijioke James and Honorable Lam Adesina, a point of correction, well, a point of elaboration. He said that the discos entered with force majeure. They issued a notice of force majeure. And the reason, as reported, for the force majeure, according to the energy companies, is that they say that the government had not indicated to consumers that they could bypass discos and buy power directly from generating companies on account of the many challenges that consumers are having with regard to discos. Now, Chijioke James, look, from the totality of the narration, we know that Mr. Odunton probably still has a lot more to say. Is it that the power energy sector it's near collapse, or it's virtually collapsed, and that what we need is, again, I mean, to use the phrase, a revolution that totally shatters and alters what we are seeing? They look frustrated, consumers are frustrated, the economy is hampered. Where are we?
The truth, and I'll be very blunt, is that the federal government, the president, should declare an emergency in the power sector. The summary of our discussion, either you're a generation company, you're a transmission company, you are a distribution company, or you are the consumer, which you consume electricity, I do, Honorable Lam consumes, my sister here consumes. It's affecting everybody. And this has a triple effect on the economy. So, the current administration preaches corruption, anti-corruption. And I will request, most humbly, the president to beam his searchlight on the power sector, because that is the engine room that can drive this economy. Without that, we're just going nowhere. I just gave you a small analysis that if South Africa in Africa has a generation and evacuation capacity of close to 50,000 megawatts, how can we in 2017 be beating our chest at 7,000 megawatts as if? So how do you want to grow the economy?
All right.
Yeah.
Chijioke James,
that's just the summary.
thank you very much. Honorable Lam Adesina, is this matter bigger and perhaps weightier than you ever conceptualized before you moved your motion, considering what Mr. Odunton has been saying with regard to the many challenges across the value chain of the power sector?
Well, thank you very much. I think my brother in Ibadan, Mr. Oduton, is just being emotional about the issue. And I will want to appeal to him to apologize to Nigerians because he's not being fair with his words to Nigerians. First and foremost, I want to commiserate with the discourse. I know that they will naturally be facing challenges, as he has rightly analyzed. But truly, they must have seen some of these things before they went into the sector. And like my brother, Mr. Chijoke said, it's either you are ready to do the job or you leave the job. It's as simple as ABC. You can't come here and be emotional about this whole thing. And for example, while he was talking, he spoke about the fact that somewhere around my father's house, they had to disconnect illegal connections. That area is an area that even if you go there, you know that a lot of people have suffered. They hardly have light in Felele. They hardly have light. They even do not have a lot of prepaid meters in that area. And now, along the line, one of the things that we discovered, and I want to throw the question to him, why is it that they have stopped and they are making sure that people do not go for Unistar Muma prepaid meters, the ones that was given to us by the PHCN of Nigeria? Why are they forcing people to go to get the Sabrod, the Mujek, the Tinustar that are wasting people's credit? For example, he will also know that I wrote them 3 times, 2 times. My house in Ibadan, I'm hardly there. I used to have a meter there, the normal one, the small one. And max in a month, the max I spent, even when I was commissioner in Oyo State, that was always on ground, is about 15 to 20,000. And just of recent, even before they started increasing their tariff, the meter got spoiled. I had to pay for a new meter. They brought the big one. As I'm speaking to you, he knows that I wrote them. I spent, even without being in that house, close to 70,000 every month. Where's the correlation?
Are you running a factory in the house?
I don't know. I've written them 2 times. They've not responded. In fact, they responded at some point. They sent some people. They now told me, their staffs told me that they were bringing a new meter, which is to tell you that they agree that there's something wrong fundamentally.
I would agree with
Up
you.
till today, they have not brought that meter. And he is there sitting. He needs to apologize to Nigerians. You cannot sit down there and be telling us that we are not being truthful to the president. You have gone for investigation. Are we the ones that are running the discourse? Is it not our job to make sure that you give us what we pay for? Nigerians need you to apologize to them for that comment you made on TV. It's not fair to Nigerians.
All right.
They must be given what's it called for what they are paying.
All right, Honorable Adedayo, Lam additional. Let's pause you in the meantime and introduce another guest. Well, he's a familiar face in the power sector. Dr. Sam Amadi is the former Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Dr. Sam Amadi, a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I don't know how much of the comments of Oduton you picked up. Oduton is spokesperson of the Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors. He's been speaking to us from our Ibadan Network Center. He is still there. The bottom line of what he said, and the guest here will also attest to that, is that the power sector is in crisis. Apparently, the architecture is broken down, it's collapsed, and nothing appears to be working along the value chain. Blame game. Tariff incessantly hiked, meters are unavailable, power is short of poor supply, consumers are groaning, discos are groaning, and perhaps Gencos are also groaning. So why don't you just call the whole thing off?
Well, interesting. Well, my friend Odutan, I know his views, even though I didn't listen to them on my way coming to the studio. But clearly, things are down and bad, but this is not unusual, especially in this kind of transition. The honorable member was very vehement, and I heard him too. But there are 3 points I would like to make. One is that when things are very bad, you have to exercise some level of realism to say, okay, what is bad, what can be fixed? Otherwise, you scrap off everything, and then it doesn't help. So hysteria is not required at this point. As a regulator, former regulator, what we'll talk about regulatory craft is ability to dimension problems and don't allow the best to drive out the good. Meaning there could be interventions that could be win-win now, even if it doesn't address the whole crisis, but focus on it. Let's take, for example, the discourse complaint about financial viability, which is real.
When we did the last tariff, we projected some degree of power, periodic power increase. So by now, you could be doing, it could be benchmark at, let's say, 7,000 regular power supply to the grid. Now, that makes some financing possible. So you could say that the tariff will be X based on a projected capacity growth. And don't forget that in this industry, the more you produce, all things being equal, the less the price, because the unit cost, which is the marginal cost or the average cost of the utility, will always go down as quantity increases, all things being equal. So essentially, if quantity is no longer increasing or even dwindling, it means that somebody is carrying the whole in his pocket. That's one. Two, we also have indexed the price to changes in inflation and all those rate riders, inflators, foreign exchange, inflation, and of course, cost of gas. I don't know where the cost of gas is now, but usually very stable. But foreign exchange, of course, we know that it's not that stable. So that means that there will be also a under recovery by the operator. And so that's why the structure arranges for periodic changes, what we call minor reviews. And oftentimes, before we left, we didn't do the last one because we felt that politically it was not feasible. Two, you couldn't ask consumers to be paying for increasing rate when production is down, when they're not getting services. So the regulator has to do some socioeconomic analysis. So, but all that means that somehow the producer, the disco, the supplier will not recover all money that he had been contracted, or the regulator has given him guarantee that he will recover. Well, how do we sort it out? Well, of course, they are businessmen. They can do investment and recover, when the times are good. So on the part of the discos, yes, I think they have some legitimate agitation that the pricing perhaps is not favoring them, and the collection level is very low, which is partly their fault and partly a structural problem. When I was the regulator, and that's why we narrowed the collection law to 0. We said, look, you guys go and fix collection. You can't recover from failure to collect. I give an example. I use a meter, and my meter spoiled, and I reported. Thankfully, yesterday they came with a new meter to install, but it took a long while, and all those periods I wasn't paying because I couldn't pay. Now, I know there are hundreds or thousands of people in this country perhaps who have the same case. So if those people are not paying, it simply means that the disco is losing revenue. There are some people who may not pay. Let's take, for example, some military installations, and they are beating up disco staff. The disco can come and say, look, we've done due diligence. We can't recover from this category of customers. The regulator will classify them as not recoverable because of perhaps some structural problem. But before you say you can't recover, tell us what you've done to recover. So those are some of the arguments we put forward, and of course that process was badly misunderstood and politicized. It looked like we didn't want discos to recover. But the principle behind it is that the discos' profitability should be matched with their hard work. That's incentive regulation, meaning that the more you do, the more you're profitable. But it looks like in the structure, there are some windfall. You don't work, but you get rewarded. So that's one problem to fix. But the other one is actually that the government also, there are some guarantees to disco. For example, subsidies and all kinds of things. I hear that there's plans to take out some consumers, some big consumers out of the discos network. That would be very bad, because part of the arrangement is that you give them guarantee that there is X number of customers, and the rich and the poor. So we cross-subsidize. We say, okay, the big guys, the commercial guys will subsidize the poor residential consumers. If you take out, if you give the big guys right to opt out of the network, then you are not doing good to the distribution companies. So the point I want to make is that, look, we can fix it. But it starts with the disco owners need to understand, day one, that in this market, you invest and recover afterwards. That means you should look for the money, put into the system, and recover. The regulator should know that in this market, you have to give guarantee of recovery. So if you're not recovering fully today, you can recover fully tomorrow. And the government should know that nothing is fixed with hasty action. Scrambling the process or asking discos to go to hell wouldn't solve the problem, because new owners, new people will come in and they will face the problem of financial viability. So it's a big elephant in the room. How do we ensure that the operators are financially viable as well as diligent, quality of service improved, and consumers are paying and receiving value? I think the loser in all this will be the consumer, who obviously is not getting value in terms of power supply, and not getting value in terms of quality of service, in terms of metering, in terms of prompt services, and in terms of appropriate billing. So we need to fix it in these three approaches. Fix the discos, give them guarantee, give them recovery, force the discos to make investment, borrow money, or dilute their equity ownership, bring in new owners, and then government should try their best to make sure that whatever guarantees we provide for them, we cash it out on real time to enable them to reinvest in the network.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi. But let's get to Mr. Oduton in Ibadan. Of course, I know you want to speak to some other issues that have been raised, but then there's one issue that keeps playing up here. You have everyone here saying that my meter went bad and I was given a new one. The previous one, what's going to happen to it? Why is it that these meters are we're not able to repair them? There's this issue of, oh, my meter is bad and I have to write and I'm given a new one.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me acknowledge my good friend, Dr. Sam Amadi. He has said it all. I think people need to play back what Sam had said this morning, play it back one by one and see what this guy had said. And nobody can say he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's not partial, it's not in government, it's not more a regulator. So he can even pick to power now. Now, the issue of meters. When a meter is bad, a meter is bad. When you buy a Tokumbo car, a car is produced, certain components in the car like carburetor, alternator, they all have lifespan. Even the battery in your car have lifespan. Once that time passes, like 10 years in some cases, after that, you need to replace your battery, you need to replace your carburetor, or even your alternator. So replacement of it is very vital. But again, like I said, replay back what Dr. Amadi has said. I don't even need to say much because he has said it all. He's my good friend, he knows. Even where we differ, he knows. The truth of the matter is that we are saying you should fix this sector and just go by what he has said on how you do in those three ways. Because if you give the disco the guarantee and you do what is right with the discos, then you can pin them down and force them to do what they are supposed to do. They can be penalized. You can even take the disco from them for $1. It's there in the agreement. But you cannot tie my legs and ask me to run. There's no way I can run. Oh, there's no way I can clap with only one hand. You can only clap with two hands. So unless we face that reality, then we will not be, thank God I'm not a politician. I always thank God for that. A typical Nigerian politician will not say it as it is. But we thank God for his blessings. The truth of the matter is that Dr. Amadi raised a point that I want us to also look at, because that will bring more crisis in future. The issue of removing the big customers, what we call the maximum demand customers, big industries, and saying, don't go through this way again, go direct. Once you remove that, and that's what the government is doing now, that's what we are saying about government policy somersault. It's either they don't know what they are doing or they are playing politics with power. Once you remove that, the cross subsidy is gone. Once that is gone, the tariff will go up so high for the consumer, for the residential customers. If you say you want some people to be given energy directly by the GENCOs, why not take my residential customer and take them directly? Do those ones as eligible customers then? So what we are saying is that we need to put Nigeria first. We need to fix this sector. For me, I will not defend the inefficiency of the discos. I've spoken before about even our staff and some of the inefficiencies that we see all over the places. And I say that I wish I can bring angels or Malaika to Nigeria to help me run the power sector. Because even a mere marketer, they perform a lot of atrocities, no doubt about that. The issue of customer service, there are a lot of things that we still need to do more. It's better now than it was in 2012, but I'm not saying that we're there. So we need to fix it. Listen to Dr. Amadi, go back and replay what he said. For me, he has spoken for the sector. He has said what we all need to know. We need to walk the talk. We should stop deceiving the president. Instead of going on there to say Nigeria is now producing 7,000 megawatts, we should be telling the president what we call the energy sent out, the actual energy that goes into the system. We should tell the president about the transmission bottleneck. We should tell the president about a lot of things that are going on, even the inefficiency of the discourse. Let us say the truth to power. That's my own point.
All right. Sorry, Rhoda, I was just wondering, Sunday Oduton, thank you very much. You were responding to the question by my colleague You were using the analogy of a car, and it's a Tokumbo car, for instance. Are discos, in a sense, therefore, some kind of Tokumbo cars that they are still operating on a carburetor instead of a fuel injector? You know, a carburetor, you would need to use some paper at some point, you know, to be brushing off the parts so that it can fire very well. Maybe that's why you are running at a lower speed. But we'll keep you on pause in the meantime. I'll bring in Dr. Sam Amadi again into the conversation. Well, Dr. Amadi, a bit more seriously, you touched on a number of points. I won't pull you back on those, but from what the consumers see, and as you rightly indicated, the consumer is the one that takes the shorter end of the stick in all of this. Yep. We've heard about a lot of interventions by the government, always in billions and billions. And yet, what the discos are supposed to be doing, say, look, provide meters. It's a challenge. What is the problem? What is the big deal about getting meters? Where did they get it wrong? They're supposed to get transformers. They're supposed to modernize their transformers. Not in all cases. Communities are still paying for transformers. They are also blaming generation companies to say they are generation companies. I recall that a couple of years ago, the price of gas to Gencos, the price of gas was stabilized. And then you have power plants all around the country. So what are we not getting right?
Well, thank you very much. I think first thing, like you said, is by the way, let me respond to the meter issue by our co-presenter. Clearly, what happened in most cases that meters can and should be repaired, like you said. But what they can say is that maybe some damages could be beyond repair. For example, just like in other equipment. But we give them 20. A meter is supposed to have like 10 years or 20 years guarantee in terms of lifespan. So it has a lifespan. But either because the velocity of their power, the frequency of the outages are too many, and then they destroy the meter quickly. There's a high reportage of meter faults in this country. It goes to three things. Well, first is, are we sure these meters are strong enough? Are they really functionally okay? Secondly is that power quality affects meter. And then, of course, sometimes the discos and their staff may want to discard and import, which gives money. So that's another issue. But back to the problem. The problem is fundamentally is this, and that's the truth. We privatize wrongly, in a haste, in my view. The National Electric Power Policy provided for a structure. It says, first, you liberalize, unbundle. After unbundling, you corporatize, a period in which these companies learn corporate governance, put their accounts together, improve their managerial systems. So then when they have corporatized, then the market, the regulator has set up the regulatory regulations robust enough, then you can privatize. And the wisdom of this is this. There's no magic about privatization. I wrote a book in 2009 before I came to government called Privatization and Public Good, the Rule of Law Challenge. And the point is very clear. In many places in the world, it fails if you do not build a robust regulatory mechanism. What causes efficiency is not private or public ownership, it's governance, management. That's why we have code of conduct for private companies. That's why shareholders fire CEOs that don't perform. So if we had created some level of efficiency in the sector and then privatize it, the new owners will now simply come with more finance and roll on. We privatize when the system is totally down. The UK privatized, they had efficiency, they had sufficient gain, they had power before they privatized. They privatized to save government of public sector borrowing liability, so the government does not have to finance an inefficiency. So mark my word, every other country that privatized and got it right had some level of sufficiency, capacity growth. Then they need to make their naira value for value. So instead of government putting money inefficient, allow private sector to come in with better managerial skills, better financing. The first error. So now we've privatized. Second error is process of privatization. The first is stage phasing. Now we privatize. In the process, we said, look, you must have XYZ financial and technical capacity. BPE downgraded that. I wrote a report to the Vice President of Nigeria and said, look, none of these entities passed the screening we did in terms of the first term of reference. The second term of reference lowered the threshold. So to be fair, these guys who won this asset deserve to win it. You set the threshold low. They borrowed money to acquire. they have reached the maximum of their borrowing capacity. They cannot borrow to finance improvement. If the original plan was use your money, buy, then borrow to improve, we would have seen massive improvement. The problem with the sector is this. The discos cannot have access to great financing to finance a sector where they're not receiving quick recovery of their fund. Therefore, they want you to allow them to recover, and that's why government is intervening. So government is intervening because government privatizes without putting in place the necessary structural safeguards. We have a disco that cannot, without support, deliver on the metering, for example. The last time we did a meter review in 2012, we had about less than 40% of Nigerian customers metered. So each disco will spend so much money to meter. What do? We brought CAP-Me, which is let consumers finance metering and then recover through energy credit. I still believe it's still the best principle, because the principle is the principle of I acquire the asset, you amortize for me. Government discarded it. If you discard it, then either you take over the metering sector, finance it, and then discos pay you, or you outsource metering to a third party to produce. So NEC has to now come in and say, look, is it time for us to unbundle distribution, take out metering and services, and give it to another person? Because, by the way, in Europe, elsewhere, that happens. But because we don't have supply, we've not reached the area, the time of choice of supplier. But they can do that. So the answer to all this problem is, first, allow the regulator. NEC has strong guys, brilliant guys who can look at this problem. It's not solved by policy articulation from Villa or anywhere. You have to, it's a problem to be solved, and it can only be solved by regulation. If you solve it through policy, this case will go to court. But if you solve it through regulation, it's part of the contract that a regulation can supersede the contract they signed. But if you bring policy, it becomes government intervention, political risk, and they can now pull back and say they're going to put in force majeure. So my argument is simple. We had a problematic privatization. All these problems are problems that show that we either privatize in a haste, we privatize everything at the same time, we privatize Disco and Genco at the same time. There were some economic assumptions that are not true, that were more of fundamental beliefs that is not true, that once private owners come in, finance kicks in, improvement kicks in overnight. It's not true. What solves the problem is the quality of corporate governance, regulation. So it will take us some time for NEC to build those regulatory framework. In the meantime, what shall we do? Force the discos to deliver on their commitments. If you look at the last tariff we issued, it had benchmarks. We said, look, discos will collect this money if they first, in 2 years or so, finish metering. If they do this, anybody who has paid for meter, who didn't have meter, should no longer pay for electricity after some time. It was in that order. So go back and operationalize the regulatory tools properly, rather than these fire brigade policy interventions. It will not solve this problem. It will create additional crisis. So my answer to the question is simple. Allow the regulator. Look at regulatory orders. Look at the tariff. The tariff we issued was not operationalized properly. It's not about increase in price. It's also about improvement in service. It's also about a compact. I insisted that the tariff will be matched with a commitment, actionable on the part of discos. One of them is a period in which you must meter. 2, a period in which anybody who has paid for meter and you've not supplied should stop paying bills. Because that's the normal thing. You have to put the discos on a shock therapy. At the same time, put the consumers that they must pay their bill, and put government to deliver on their commitment through regulatory management, not policy, not administrative fears.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi. Of course, we still have areas where people have paid for meter for months, even up to a year, and up till now, as we speak, they don't have meters, and they're still giving estimated bills. Well, this issue has sparked a huge public interest, and we have lots and lots of tweets here with us. Of course, power is something that Kingsley, everyone is passionate.
Yeah, because I mean, we use power in the studio here, we use power at home. I mean, you need power in schools, you need power in hospitals.
Everywhere.
And everywhere. And we all know that, you know, the power situation in the country is abysmally poor. All right, let's take the reactions we're getting from our viewers. As we indicated, we hope we're able to take them, but you have our Twitter handle on the lower left-hand side of the screen there at NTA GMN.
The first one is from Dele Jack Solomon, and he tweets, "My distinguished moderators, please ask your guest what is Disco doing to install prepaid meters to residents, even when many had already paid for them, particularly in a core axis of Lagos State. Nigerians are seriously complaining about this."
Jibril Naina tweets, "It's sad and true that the concession of PHCN and Discos toppled the meters such that if I credit within a few days it finishes. Now concession doesn't. They should frustrate the government. They should frustrate the government, the people. They are supposed to set certain regulations, even if it's concessioning such things."
Temple Oriake, he tweets, they said the use of prepaid meters promotes energy use efficiency, but it is used to exploit consumers, and it is unacceptable.
Sonny Michael Amakoji, "I think non-provision of meters by Discos is a calculated attempt to exploit Nigerians. Now, the vast majority of Nigerians are paying for energy that they did not consume. According to him, this is exploitative in nature, and it must stop."
And this one is from Omogbalan. He tweets, "It is only in Nigeria that you pay for a service not enjoyed. We are subjected to crazy bills, estimated bills, whatever bills, and all of that. Meanwhile, you hardly enjoy 15 hours of uninterrupted power supply per day, yet you're charged outrageously."
Ajisa Finite tweets, "Now the operators should please work on making electricity constant. We can afford to pay more, provided we enjoy what we pay for."
And Mogbalan tweets again, "It will interest you to know that some houses may not have lights for weeks, yet are charged outrageous bills at the end of the month. The Gencos, the Discos are just reaping the poor masses off with government's paying lip service."
Now, this is from Eunice Unwedo. It says, "Thanks for bringing up this topic that is currently giving Nigerian citizens high blood pressure. Please, President Buhari should intervene and deliver us from this terrible situation."
Aminu Modibo tweets, "We are worried that the increase in tariff does not translate to efficient power supply."
Heron Kinema, "The electricity distributors are not the ones creating the estimated billing, but the corrupt employees under the distributors. They are their agents, by the way."
This one is from Aminu Modibo. He says, "My problem is not the increase in the tariff. My problem is that why is it that we don't have standard electricity?"
And we have this from Shakiro. It says, "If government must be successful in the electricity sector, meters, that is like recharge cards in telecoms, must be free and charges come later." So free meters and charges later.
And Unique Collection tweets, "Please, these meters should be made available to citizens. If it can't be free anymore, we are ready to buy. These areas, the areas where charges are up to 40,000 per month."
Now, that same Twitter handle continues. "There's too much talk and no action on this issue. Can't these meters be produced locally? The estimated billing is frustrating and very unrealistic."
And exaggerated billing is not only an anomaly of humongous dimensions, but clearly a case of injustice to some consumers.
And that's Clifford Aguguese says, "Why do we appear prostrate in cases we have the wherewithal to otherwise manage?"
And Jibril Inaina tweets, "Honorable Lam, they are charging high. How comes I recharge 10,000 naira and within or less than a month it's finished and I don't use appliances?"
We have this one from Faith Mark. "Please, I need you to address the issue of asking consumers to pay 3,000 of their old debts before they can buy electricity every month, despite the fact that there's no power."
Osas God's Time tweets, "The issue is affecting us here in Apapa, Lagos, with a serious increase on electricity bill every month that a flat pays up to 50,000 naira upwards."
Now, this is from Rume. Rume is responding to Mr. Oduton. And Mr. Oduton, I'm reading this with apologies to you on the basis of what you have said. It says, "Mr. Oduton might be a corrupt person, but not all Nigerians are corrupt. South Africa is more corrupt, but they have light."
And Clifford Aguguese tweets, "So why must I be made to pay for electricity bill of a tenant occupying a facility before me when he's alive? Couldn't payment be tied to the person's identity?"
Ibrahim Tudu, "Now industries and businesses are suffering, hospitals are suffering, all sectors of the economy are suffering from the inefficiency of the power sectors, discos should pack and go. They have failed competency tests by consumers in Nigeria.
Allow communities...
That's like El-Rufai and the competency test for teachers.
For teachers, competency test for the discos. All right, Cowboy, he tweets, allow communities to cut from the national grid if they like. Federal government should not tax companies for generating their own power.
Osato Idemudia tweets, power and energy is all about politics and business. Ikboba Dam in Benin is rotting away. Now, can the dam not generate electricity? There is too much talk. We need action.
And Law Ralph, he tweets, he says, lots of unconstitutional corruption and massive extortion is taking place in the power sector, and declaring a state of emergency is ideal. Those are some of the tweets that we can take right now. Keep sending in your tweets at NTAGMN.
All right, let's return, gentlemen. Let's pause Abuja in the meantime. I return to Mr. Sunday Oduto. Mr. Sunday Oduto, reality is sinking in. Let's say for the comments that the other guests here in the Abuja studios have made, including Dr. Sam Amadi, what in your opinion, it's perhaps, shall we say, a quick fix or a way out? Do discos have a realistic appraisal of the challenges that they are in? I mean, they're already in a pit, why continue to dig?
Well, thank you very much. I have said it before. The issue of what is the way out is very clear. Everybody here, even my friend, the Honorable, my other friend in the studio in Abuja, and Dr. Amadi have also said it all. I think we should look at the issues. We should be realistic about the issue of cost, the issue of shortfall, the issue of price, selling price, the issue of subsidy, things that were promised that were never delivered. This was promised by the government of Mr. Jonathan, and Mr. Buhari has been here since 2015. He has not revisited it as well, so government is continuing. The issue of sanctity of contract is also very important. And I keep saying that everything about the power sector borders on the issues of Naira and Kobo. It may interest you to know, and as you all know, we are all customers of one disco or the other. It may interest you to know that when I say we are terrible in Nigeria, we are not saying all Nigerians are corrupt. I'm not corrupt. You can check me out anywhere. But I'm saying that we need to put Nigeria first. There's a dam in Abuja, between Abuja and Oyo State, between Abuja and Oyo State, called Oyon Dam. There is a turbine there capable of producing 9 megawatts of electricity. It has been commissioned by President Shagari since 1980 or 1981. They have never used it for 1 hour, and it's there. Where I live in Abuja and Obantoko, the maximum hours of electricity that we have in 24 hours is 3 hours maximum. I've never seen electricity supply of 4 hours continuously in Obantoko in Abeokuta, and that's where I live. All other landlords in the area bother me every time I'm at home. And let me say this, we cannot fix this power sector until the federal government come out bold enough and ban some of us from using generator, beginning from the Minister of Power, Permanent Secretary Minister of Power, all heads of agencies, all NEC commissioners, all CEOs of GENCOs, CEOs of DISCOs, all associations like us too. We should not be using generator. We may have an inverter, so that if I don't have light, I know who to call. We will be sweating in our own homes, and then we'll put Nigeria first. You cannot continue to earmark such a humongous amount. Go and check the budget and see how much is the amount for even the Federal Minister of Power in Abuja in this year's budget, even the presidency. So we cannot say we want to fix a problem and we are just going on the option that we have. We keep on using generator in our homes, and some Nigerians are there, they have no power. We should put Nigeria first. That is all I'm saying. We should all work together and put it first. In fact, Dr. Amadi can also join us by stopping, by not using generator in his home, even though he has every right, in fairness, to use generator. But he has spoken well. We should look at it not in terms of passing the buck or blaming anybody. And I apologize to Nigerians for this continuous, very poor state of power supply. I do not exonerate my own industry, the discourse. All of us are involved. But the main body that can help Nigeria is the almighty federal government of Nigeria. That's my take.
Thank you very, very much, Sunday Odutan. I'd like to get the views of Honorable Alam Additional. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much, and I want to thank my brother Ibadan for that apology to Nigerians. We all need to apologize to Nigerians. But what I would have expected you to come on here to do this morning is to come and tell us, what are you guys doing to make meters available to Nigerians? What are you doing to stop estimated bills? Sure. What are you doing to make sure that light is available? And you say you are not a politician. You have already showcased yourself as a politician here, and I believe when I come back to Ibadan, I'll meet you so that maybe you can join our political party. But on a very serious note, Nigerians are waiting to hear from all of us. What are we doing to solve the problem that they are facing? For example, as a federal lawmaker, I have come up with a motion. That's my job. Your job is to also come up here and tell us what you are doing to solve the problems that people are facing. Instead of us speaking grammar, Nigerians are not ready to hear all of these things we are saying. They are just waiting to hear that the problems are solved. So I expect you to tell us here what you are doing to solve the problems of Nigerians, whereas they don't have meters that they are paid for, whereas, for example, you have also said that you have some of your staffs that are corrupt. What are you doing to make sure that you take them out of the system? Because you don't expect that in a situation whereby Nigerians are facing economic challenges, they'll still be facing challenges with meters. And then I need you to also tell us why you are gradually, systematically phasing out some meters and bringing some new ones into the system. And I mentioned the issue of the MOMAs and the Unistar. For example, in my house here in Abuja, where I'm always at, the max I spend in a month is about 15,000. Now, compared to the house I am not in Ibadan, where I spend 70,000, what are you doing to resolve that? That's my own case. I know a lot of Nigerians are facing that same challenge. You can listen to the tweets from our people. This is what they are facing. So what's the solution?
All right, Honorable Lam Additional, thank you very much. One more time, Dr. Sam Amadi, you've talked about you made suggestions as to how the issues in the power sector can be tackled. What would be your response to perhaps a rejoinder to the effect that we have seen in recent times the monthly or so meetings involving the Ministry of Power? We have other power stakeholders, they hold meetings here and there, and then we are still having all these squabbles. We are not seeing meters, we are not seeing light, we are still getting estimated billing. Frustration is mounting. What would be your reaction to that? Is it that mechanism is not efficient? And what would you like to say more in terms of regulatory revival?
Thank you very much. Very good question. First and foremost, the issue is simple but difficult. And let me appeal, please, we should depoliticize power sector. When we were there, part of the problem we had was a lot of politics, including government want to have 20 megawatts. So every day you announce increase of 10 megawatts, but in real value, it's not getting to the people. Nothing has changed significant before we came, while we are there and now. So we should accept the fact that it will take a lot of heavy lifting to solve the problem. Now, back to your quick question. The issue of those meetings, some of them are political. The dynamics of the minister sitting in a meeting with the regulator and operators is not going to work. That's not a problem-solving meeting. When I was there, after presentation, we tried to have what we call sector meeting, only the operators and the regulator. And then we invite, as needed, some of the ministry, parliamentarians, because it's a meeting of regulation. We should unbundle policy making and regulation. The government makes policy and the standard. Let the regulators sit with operators, because some of these meetings will require data. It will require data. So first, let there be regular problem-solving meeting. And then again, NEC, there are a lot of very smart NEC engineers. Let them go out in the field now and certain whether those meters they're talking about, it will be big fraud if meters are reset wrongly. And I think NEC should, I trust those guys there, they're honest and hardworking. Let them go out and do random sampling of these moject meters, as they say. If they are fixed against the engineering and technical standard that NEC approved and the tariff, that means there's a windfall for DISCO and a report for customers. That's a low-hanging fruit, and I think this morning or in a few days' time, NEC engineers should go out and test those meters and confirm to consumers publicly that those meters are not set at its advantage to consumers, because that would be a criminal offense. Don't forget that tariff is a law. If you violate it, it's a crime, and it could be prosecuted.
I'm just wondering, one more time, again, for the benefit of our viewers, you've talked about the need to separate, or rather not to mistake policy for regulation. Absolutely. Could you explain that? What
I mean is that, you see, a policy says, for example, want everybody to be metered before 2 years. That's a policy. The regulatory work now is, what does that mean in terms of tariff, in terms of cost? You can't ask a disco to meter people without providing for prospect of financing and recovery. That's when the regulator now translates policy to workability and say, this is the economics, this is the engineering part of it, the technical, and put them together, and then give you a time frame, and then put out enforcement and monitoring processes. So what we have been doing, unfortunately, with good faith, is that we have kind of jumbled together regulation and policy. So when we say things, we talk at it in AIT, talk at meetings, and that's the end of it. But you have to allow the independence of the regulator is the beginning, and the firmness of the regulator and its technical capacity to solve problems is the beginning of sorting this sector.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi. We have more tweets here. Let's see if we can take just a few of them before we call it a day. The very first one is from Ade Sam. He says there can never be any justification for estimated billing. It's a fraud, and they should look for solutions to their problems.
We have this from Eunice Nwedo. If prepaid meter is not made available and affordable, just like mobile phones, then Fashola is still failing us in the area of power distribution.
Jibril Naina tweets, Honorable Additional is more concerned with our welfare than the discos. Roughly charges are high and must be questioned.
Clifford Aguguesi, bail is free, yet Nigerians who get arrested pay bonds on a regular basis. Meters are supposed to be free, yet Nigerians pay through their nose to get one, while the discos and their agents and collaborators smile to the banks.
And this one is from Engineer Toba. He says, I use a prepaid meter. It is ideal that one has to pay 5,000 naira cost for a lost card. To me, it's on a high side in as much as I'm still using the card to pay bills afterward. This happens in Ibadan.
Abdul Rahman Usman tweets, that's to the spokesperson, that's Mr. Sunday Oduto. Why are you avoiding the old meter? The new meters you recommend are also corrupt.
And Law C. Ralph tweets, privatization of some sectors in the power sector has succeeded in empowering and enriching the companies and impoverishing the people.
Now, we have another one again. This is from Clifford Aguguesi. Meter standardization must be gotten right at this stage. Who are the meter manufacturers? Do we know all of them? Are they coded? Can we track their activities using their codes?
And Ibing Bature, he tweets, he said, discos are a private entity, and if they find anything they aren't interested in, they're free to go to court rather than keep silent. We Nigerians are in need of power. Those are the tweets that we have right now, and I guess that's where we have to call it today. But then the Mojek meters, just as Dr. Amadi said, I hope that particular meter is actually looked into.
Oh, well, Dr. Amadi is given all the thoughts and suggestions have been brilliant. Brilliant suggestion is a low-hanging fruit. Send out the NEC regulators, the NEC engineers to randomly sample those meters to see whether the meters have been rigged. It's just like you tampering with the fuel pump. If the price is 145 naira a litre and then you rig it to read 147 or more, it's a criminal offense, by the way.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of this discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi. He's a former CEO of Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. It's a pleasure to have you in the program. All right, we also want to say a very big thank you to Chijioke James. He's the President, Electricity Consumers Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the program.
All right, so that does it for our discussion on the electricity power sector, crazy bills and absence of meters and general inefficiency. But we had also indicated, of course, that we're going to take on a second topic that's to say, a tribute to Dr. Alex Ekwueme, former Vice President of the Federal Republic. He was Vice President from 1979 to 1983. He passed away in London. Of course, we're going to have the opportunity for a greater detailed soon.
Hope that tomorrow that will last.